Hello readers! I can't wait to read today's picture book to you because it's one of my favourite picture books. I've read it over and over again and I've read it to lots of different students and I'm so excited to read it to you today. This story involves a dragon, a mouse, a restaurant, a whistle, a very old man, a boat, and also it is set in Hong Kong. It is full of adventure and friendship and beautiful scenery. And I really hope you enjoy it today because I think it's a bit of a different story than you might have heard before. Because it's got a dragon in it, I'd like to ask you, what do you know about dragons? What is a dragon? During this story, you're going to learn a bit more about dragons if you don't know already, but think about, what do I know about dragons? What does a dragon look like? Where do they come from? What different people around the world have dragons as part of their culture? Now, this story is set in Hong Kong and China, where dragons are a very big part of the cultural life. I'm going to tell you a bit more about dragons in the story, but for now, I really hope you enjoy it. It is called Chopsticks. Chopsticks is the name of the mouse. The mouse is one of the main characters in the story. It is a narrative, which means it's a made-up story, it's a fiction story, and it has three parts: an orientation or a beginning, a problem or a complication in the story, and then it's solved at the end in the resolution. At the beginning of the story, I want you to really concentrate on the orientation part, working out who's the story about, where is it set, and what is happening. I hope you enjoy Chopsticks.
This map shows the two places that we will travel to in our story, Hong Kong and Guilin. Chopsticks is written and illustrated by Jon Berkeley, and it is published by Oxford University Press. The picture on the left-hand side shows us what a typical restaurant might look like in Hong Kong, where the story is set, where family and friends are gathering together to eat inside a restaurant. But the story actually takes place outside the restaurant. In a busy harbour in the faraway island of Hong Kong, there is a floating Chinese restaurant. It is built on a big barge and has 3 stories and hundreds of windows and a roof of green tiles. Every night, people come in sampans to eat pork and fish and prawns and rice with chopsticks and to drink green tea from china bowls. This is a sampan. It is a boat with a flat bottom and it's often made from wood. Sometimes they are moved by oars or rowing, and sometimes they have a small motor. And this is the driver who is taking people across the harbour over to the restaurant. If a restaurant is 3 stories high, that must fit a lot of people. So the part we're reading now is the introduction to the story. We found out where the story takes place, which is in Hong Kong and at a restaurant. This is the entrance to the restaurant, and you can see that there are 2 red lanterns over the door and 2 dragons on tall poles. This is a very important part of the story, so I want you to have a good look. The restaurant in our story is actually based on a real restaurant in Hong Kong called the Jumbo Floating Restaurant. And you can see that it is 3 stories high and it does have green tiles. In this floating restaurant lives a small grey mouse called Chopsticks. Chopsticks comes out at night when all the people have gone home and moonbeams slant through the windows. He scurries about looking for scraps of food that the cleaners have missed. So this is one of our main characters in the story, Chopsticks the mouse. When it says he scurries about looking for scraps of food, that means he runs around on all four paws, but moving very fast and darting from one place to another. I think he's going fast because he doesn't want anybody to catch him. And what a beautiful piece of description we hear. Moonbeams slant through the windows. This tells us that it's night time because the moon shines at night and the light of the moon is coming through the windows on an angle. So in this introduction, we've met one of our main characters, Chopsticks the mouse. Now, he is probably named Chopsticks because he lives in a restaurant. And in Hong Kong and other parts of Asia and all around the world, some people eat food using chopsticks. So it's two pieces of wood used for picking up or cooking food, like forks and knives and spoons and chopsticks. They're all utensils for eating. I think we might be about to meet one of the other main characters. Let's listen to the story. At the entrance to the restaurant stands two enormous pillars. Pillars are tall poles, often made out of wood. They are painted in red and gold, and around each one coils a magnificent carved dragon. Coil means wrapped around. One New Year's night, as Chopstick washed his whiskers in the silvery light of a full moon, one of the wooden dragons cleared his throat and whispered down to him, saying, little mouse, climb up here so I can speak to you." Sometimes in stories, we learn about the main characters and what they are like through what they do and what they say. The story might not say this is a very brave mouse, but we can tell he's brave by what he does and what he says. So if you were a very small mouse and a wooden dragon suddenly came to life, talked to you, and asked you to come up, would you? One of the interesting things in this story is that we've discovered that the mouse can talk and the dragon can talk. We don't know if they're talking in mouse language or dragon language or English or Chinese or some other language, but the two characters can speak to each other. So in a fiction story, anything can happen. Your animals could speak in your stories too. What do you think Chopsticks is going to do? Let's find out. Chopsticks looked up at the whispering dragon. He took a deep breath and hopped onto the dragon's tail. Around and around the enormous pillar he climbed. Halfway up to the dragon's head, he stopped. "This is close enough," he said. The dragon sighed. "Oh, I won't eat you, little mouse," he said. "I've been here for a long, long time, and I have never moved an inch." So Chopsticks is very brave because he did climb up. When it says he took a deep breath, sometimes we take a deep breath when we have to get our courage, when we have to do something that we're a bit afraid of. But we also know Chopsticks is careful because he did stop halfway up the dragon just to be safe. Of course you haven't, said Chopsticks. You are made of wood and lacquer. Lacquer is like a clear paint or clear varnish that protects the wood. That is true, said the dragon, but oh, how I would love to fly. Up over the roof I would go, and over the mountains, over the shining cities and the dark forests. If you could free me, you could come with me, little mouse. Now we are learning a bit about the dragon now. The dragon isn't fierce or scary. He's actually dreaming of having adventures. So we're learning about what kind of character the dragon is as well. He's also very friendly if he's inviting the little mouse along. The dragon was talking about the mountains he would like to go over. And the artist has painted this beautiful picture of a real place in China called Guilin. And it's a very famous place that lots of people like to go and visit because of these tall mountains. And they're made of limestone and other rocks. So they're very precious because they can crumble away. But people like to go there to take photos and to do bushwalking and rock climbing. There's a photo showing the actual place next to the artist's painting. If you could fly away anywhere and see anything in the world, what would you like to see? In this part of the story, we get introduced to the third character in the story. We have already found the complication of the story. The complication or the problem is that the dragon can't move and he dreams of adventures. Here is the rest of the story. I have always wanted to see the world, said Chopsticks, but how could I free you from the pillar? Only old Fu knows how to give life to a wooden dragon, said the dragon. It was Fu who carved me and my brother here, but that was many years ago, and even then he was old and almost blind. So the dragon has a brother, which is the dragon on the pillar on the other side of the door, but he's not really in the story. I wonder who old Fu is.
My goodness, we are learning a lot about dragons. In Hong Kong and China, dragons are legendary creatures. They're part of Chinese folklore, Chinese traditions, Chinese culture. The dragons take on lots of forms where they look like parts of different animals, like fish and turtles and birds and lizards. But actually, the main, most common form of the dragon in China is like a long, or Hong Kong, is like a long snake with legs, 4 legs. Dragons are symbols of strength and power, and they are said to control water like waterfalls and the rainfall and floods, and they are strong and powerful. And the emperor of China, which is like what the king of another country might be, had this symbol of the dragon. And people would like to have their sons born in the year of the dragon. So dragons are really important in the culture of Hong Kong and China. There are other countries that have different types of creatures that are important to their culture. Actually, in Australia, in Indigenous cultures, some of them have the rainbow serpent, which is like a snake that part of their beliefs is the creation of the earth came about because of the rainbow serpent. So there are creatures in lots of cultures around the world. So we are learning a lot about dragons today.
This is a picture of old Fu the dragon carver, and he made these two dragons out of wood, and the tools that he has in his hands are called a chisel and a hammer. So the chisel is sharp and it's used to carve away pieces of the wood. So these would have taken a very long time. Early the next morning, Chopsticks hitched a ride to the wood carver's workshops on the other side of the harbour. There he found old Fu living by himself on a small sampan. People can live on sampans as well as use them for transport. And this is an older section of Hong Kong harbour, but you can see in the background some of the tall skyscrapers which are part of the newer section. Now it says Hong Kong hitched a ride. So that little phrase, hitched a ride, means he just jumped onto the boat and got a ride with them to the other side of the harbour. He didn't ask, he didn't pay, he just jumped on board. Hitched a ride, that's what it means. My goodness, he is very brave and also he is very kind and caring because obviously he really wants to help the dragon to fly. This is the close-up picture of the section of Hong Kong where there are people repairing boats, living on boats, using boats for transport and for their business, sampans. Old Fu lives on a sampan in the harbour. So everything he owns would be on that boat and he would sleep there and live there and eat there. I'm not sure where he carves his dragons, but they did say there were wood carvers' workshops, so maybe he goes somewhere else to carve. Old Fu, he said, I am Chopsticks the mouse, and I have heard you know how to bring a wooden dragon to life. Old Fu chuckled. That means laughed. You have come from the smiling dragon on the floating restaurant, he said. I always knew that one would want to fly. He was the last dragon I ever made, and the finest of them all. Maybe old Fu had to stop carving because he had gotten too old or he had lost so much eyesight that he wasn't able to use the tools safely. But he remembers that dragon because he was the last and the best dragon he ever made. So Chopsticks the mouse is trying to help solve the problem. So in the complication of the story, we have the problem or problems, and in the resolution or the ending of the story, the characters solve the problem or the author solves the problem. Old Fu is our other character in the story, and we can see by the look on his face he's a very happy man. Sometimes as people get older, they have lines next to their eyes if they've been smiling a lot. And we can see that on the first shelf behind him, he has some food, maybe some seafood, some rice, some soy sauce in the black container with the red lid, and some oil. And behind him, he has his tools. Even though he's not carving dragons anymore, he might be still making small things. Old Fu is going to help Chopsticks and the dragon. Old Fu played a short tune on a small wooden whistle. The song of a blackbird was in his tune, and the sound of the water sighing around the sampan. He played it over and over until Chopsticks had learnt it by heart. You take this whistle and keep it safe, said Old Fu to Chopsticks. The tune will only work when the moon is full. A tune is a song, and his wooden whistle is a little bit like the recorders we sometimes play in schools, but it's made out of wood. My goodness, Chopsticks is a clever mouse as well, as he can learn to play the whistle and he can learn to play a song off by heart. I hope Chopsticks can remember the song. Let's find out. On the night of the next full moon, Chopsticks climbed the wooden dragon and played Old Foo's tune for him. Remember, the tune is a song. The dragon stretched and shuddered and groaned and sighed and slowly unwound himself from the pillar. Chopsticks climbed onto his nose and held on tight to the dragon's whiskers. There's Chopsticks playing the wooden whistle. So clever. Look how happy the dragon looks. Up they flew into the night, up towards the smiling face of the moon, until the lights of the busy harbour twinkled like tiny jewels in the darkness below. That is some beautiful description. Twinkling means shining on and off like stars, and jewels are like diamonds and emeralds and other precious stones. They flew up to the smiling face of the moon. Some people think that the moon looks like there is a face in there. And some people think it looks like there's a man and a rabbit in the moon. There's lots of stories about what the moon looks like. Maybe you could look up at the moon one night and see if you can see a smiling face in it. The whole night long they flew over lands that you and I only dream of, returning to the floating restaurant just as the sun began to peep over the eastern horizon. If the sun is peeping, it's just looking a little bit. The horizon is the line that we can see where the land or the sea stops and the sky begins. And we know that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. We don't really know what land they are in, but we know that the dragon would be happy to see everything. Dragons take on many forms, and some dragons have different parts of animals in them, but the dragon in this story and the dragons in this part of Hong Kong are like a long snake with legs. So you can see that he doesn't actually have any wings, this dragon, but he is still able to fly, and we can see Chopsticks the mouse on his nose. My goodness, what a character Chopsticks is. Brave, friendly, courageous, clever, cheeky. These are some of the adjectives we might be able to use to describe Chopsticks. Can you think of any more describing words for Chopsticks? Now every full moon, the dragon and the mouse take to the warm night air, soaring over the restaurant roof, over the mountains, over the shining cities and the dark forests. In the daytime, Chopsticks sleeps in his favourite place, curled up safe and warm in the dragon's wooden mouth. I think as Chopsticks and Old Foo and the dragon solved the problem, another great thing that happened was that Chopsticks and the dragon seemed to become very good friends. And after every full moon night, he takes the story of their adventures across the harbour to old Fu. Chopsticks is a very kind mouse too, because he went back to tell old Fu about their adventures. He didn't just get the solution and then enjoy himself. He actually included old Fu in their adventures. Isn't that such a lovely story? Maybe when the next full moon comes at your house, you can look up and imagine the dragon and Chopsticks flying around and seeing the world and thinking about where you would like to go if you could fly around on a dragon. I really hoped you liked Chopsticks by Jon Berkeley.